Hey everybody, this is Colin podcasting about real estate and welcome to show 43. So hope everybody's doing well. I'm doing great. I got my Pfizer shot earlier this week, so I'm happy about that. Once they opened up Florida to over 40-year-olds, I was one of the first in line, so that's pretty cool. Still keeping very busy with real estate. I've mentioned a few times in passing about my land business, so that's been up and running for a few weeks now. If anyone wants to check out my land business website, just go to cgmland.com. That's my initials, Colin G. Murphy, so cgmland.com. And it's a new revenue generating business that I've started to initially buy vacant land in Pasco and Hernando counties here in the Tampa Bay area. And over the next 12 weeks, I'm going to be targeting absentee owners of vacant land, generally in the sub $100,000 range. I'm going to be mailing them specially designed letters. I'm also able to, see them on social media. I'm finding lots of different ways of suggesting that I'm a great person to buy their land. And it's a lot of fun. I have to say, I'm getting quite a few responses. I've done about 4 weeks worth of mailing now at the time of this recording, most of March. Once a week in March, I sent out 500 letters, or rather my company did it. I certainly didn't do it. And yeah, I've had a lot of interesting responses. There's a lot of motivated sellers of land out there. I definitely am seeing opportunities. I'm in negotiations on about 6 different lots at the minute, kind of advanced stages of negotiating to purchase these different lots. My plan is basically to buy them at a discount to market rate, generally 40 or 50 cents on the dollar, and then sell them at 80 or 90 cents on the dollar. Some of them with seller financing, so I'm looking to generate some income streams that way too. So instead of buying a lot for 25,000 and selling it for 50, I could buy a lot for 25,000 and sell it for 60 with a $20,000 deposit and then $40,000 financed over 6 or 7 years at a nice interest rate. And it's just fun. I just like exploring this new type of business. The types of people I'm dealing with people that inherited land from parents, out of state owners, small unimproved land that's owned by 5 siblings, and the land is only worth $10,000, so they're just not sure what to do with it. I'm negotiating land that is way behind on property taxes, that they're going to lose it to a property deed auction if they don't find a buyer in the next 2 months. And as some of you might know, if you list land for sale on the MLS, it's not like listing a nice single family home where you'll get an offer in 5 days. Land could be sitting there for 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 months before you find a buyer if you don't know good ways of selling it and good ways of attracting buyers. So that's good fun at the minute. I'm looking forward to doing that. In future shows, I'll tell you about. I'm happy to dig into the numbers in more detail once I've taken down a few deals and started going out the other side. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, I've 5 or 6 rehabs on the go at the moment, several of which I'm going to be keeping myself as additions to my rental portfolio. I think it's a good time to keep some rentals. Some of them I've got quite a bit of equity in them because I had to deal with just problems, just houses being vandalized, houses that were had to evict, kind of squatters, and just really kind of problem issues. But I got them very, very cheap. And once you kind of deal with the bureaucracy and the paperwork involved in evictions, and you get these houses trashed out and emptied out, they're the kind of same as anything, but you get them a lot cheaper. So some good equity in a couple of the deals I got at the moment, which is good because it's not easy to get them. And I'm keeping busy with some renovations. My project managers are busy with those, and I'm looking forward to adding a couple of rentals to my portfolio. The way you kind of have to do it is if you kind of buy them with your company and you're renovating them and putting in a tenant, you generally have to own a house for about 6 months before you refinance it. Typically, there's some convoluted ways of getting around that, but generally speaking, if I buy a house with my own money or with a private loan, and I work with a lot of private lenders, I generally have to wait about 6 months before I refinance it. So I'm kind of doing that with a few houses right now, and I'm happy to talk about it if you want to ask me later. So yeah, but look, apart from that, let's get on to the podcast because I have a pretty interesting one for you today. We're going to talk to a guy called Paul Ross on the power of language to persuade, sell, and transform, which is a topic I'm personally very interested in. I've always been interested in how you can phrase words and language in a certain ways to make suggestions or make implications or kind of plant seeds in somebody's mind. I've always loved that kind of stuff ever since I was in a busy sales floor in London and learning how to overcome objections and all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit close to my heart. But this guy takes it to a whole other level. He's been featuring in leading media outlets like BBC, Fox, CNN, Huffington Post, Rolling Stone magazine, and more. He's been doing this for 30 years. He's an author, a speaker. He's a master hypnotist. We dig into hypnotism a little bit, which I didn't think I'd be doing, but it was fun. And just basically teaching people about neuro-linguistic programming. And he just motivated, thousands of people to discover how to use, these tools to kind of change their own lives for the better. And we talked about, his shyness and lack of confidence as a young man kind of led him into studying these techniques, word suggestion, hypnosis, and how kind of implication and posing evocative questions works a lot better than, kind of closed questions or a battle of wills. And, some actionable tips. One of them was the 4 words you can use to build connections with any prospect, the types of mindsets successful people develop, actionable tips and overcoming objections, because we all overcome them, not just people that are, selling a product, but no matter what kind of environment you're in, whether you're a real estate investor, you're in the real estate world, or whether you're in accounting or engineering or admin or science, you're always trying to overcome objections somewhere. You're always trying to sell somebody on something one way or another to kind of get what you want. So there's some actionable tips here, some of which can absolutely be used in real estate and many of which can be used in other parts of your lives as well. I mean, part of the conversation we were talking about how you can use implication to get your kids to do stuff, being a lot easier than just ordering them to do it. That whole thing about, the power of suggestion and the imagination is far better than a battle of wills. So, slightly different type of podcast in the Colin podcast about real estate show, but I enjoyed it. I mean, part of this whole thing is me getting on guests that I like and asking them the questions that I want to know about stuff that I'm naturally curious about. So you're the beneficiary of some of that, and I hope you get something out of it. And your feedback is always welcome, good or bad. I'm always interested in your feedback. But listen, I won't bore you any longer. This has been one of my longer intros before we get to the podcast. So let's head on over and talk to Paul Ross, and I hope you enjoy what he has to say. Paul Ross, how you doing, sir? Welcome to the show.
Well, I'm doing pretty good. I just, as I was telling you last night, I got my foot run over by a Lyft driver. So thank you, Lyft. So you're seeing me on just a few hours sleep, but I'm a professional and we'll deliver you some amazing value as you're watching and or listening today.
Well, I wish you a speedy recovery, and I'm sure you will. So listen, why don't you start, Paul, by telling us a bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so I am a master hypnotist, a trainer and master practitioner of a discipline called Neuro-Linguistic programming, which is a study of how we can use language to structure consciousness, shape decisions, and drive behavior. It's a really, really cool thing. I am an author of this wonderful book, Subtle Words That Sell, highly acclaimed on Amazon. I am a speaker, and I'm also a cat daddy. I have 2 kitty cats. One is a kitten, the other one's a fat, lazy 13-year-old who just sleeps all day.
Those cats have a good life. But listen, I've always been fascinated by the power of language and how there's certain words and phrases that work better than others when it comes to selling or persuading or inspiring. So who first introduced you to that world?
Well, interestingly enough, Colin, I got my start as a dating coach. I was a guy who could not get a girlfriend. And yes, I was incredibly, I know, looking at me, you'd think, how could this handsome man have any trouble? But I was not always this shining example of genetic perfection you see before you. I was average with a serious tilt towards ugly. But in any case, I had problems with shyness and self-esteeming, and I didn't know how to communicate in ways other than, I would say, something you could put on a prospectus or a job application, all facts, data, figures. I didn't know how to communicate in ways that were emotionally evocative and created rapport and interest and fascination with other people. So I stumbled onto NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. I was reading self-help books at that time, trying to help myself. And I was in the self-help section of a bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
My hand literally floated up. I must have noticed out of my conscious awareness the title of the book. And it was a book called Transformations by Richard Bandler and John Grinder. It was their NLP study of a very famous hypnotist, Milton Erickson. Erickson learned how to do hypnosis conversationally. He totally destroyed the old model of close your eyes, count down from 10, see yourself in a beautiful field. Erickson knew how to use what seemed like ordinary conversation to drop in commands and suggestions. And I figured this will work gangbusters for me. Got over my fear of women, learned to communicate in an evocative way, and I began teaching it to guys. And over time, these guys would say, thank you, I found my wife, here's a picture of my kids, and I've been using your stuff for selling, and my income has skyrocketed. I thought, hey, genius, why don't you go back into your lab and figure out how to use it for sales? Which I did. I applied it to my own selling. I started teaching people, and here I am today, honored to be a guest on your podcast.
It's amazing. That's a cool story that it started out dating and teaching yourself how to get better with girls and teaching others, and then moving on to business. And I mean, can you give us any examples, or like a simple example how you might plant a certain phrase or a command into a sentence that might change the trajectory of a conversation?
Are we talking about in any context, or in the dating context, or in the sales context? So let's
give us one for dating and give us one for sales. Both sound fun.
I wasn't planning on doing that. Well, what we don't want to do in any situation, first of all, I want to make a case. I want to draw a metaphor that a sale is essentially like a date. You've got to do your prospecting. You've got to establish rapport, do your sales presentation, do your close, answer any objections, and see if you can get repeat business.
Yep.
And refer. I don't know about referrals. So in the same way, here's an example of the kind of languaging that doesn't work on a date. I didn't plan to make this about dating coaching, but here we go. If I was having a discussion with an attractive person, I said, what do you do for fun? That just requires a factual answer. Oh, I like to surf, or I like to ski. But if I ask the question, like, when you want to do something that makes you think, damn, life is good, I want more of this, what do you love to do? That's a different kind of question. It requires an answer from a much deeper, much more imaginative part of the mind. So by the questions we ask and the way in which we ask them, we can either evoke a boring factual answer that ends the discussion, or we could open the imagination and the emotions of the other person and begin to train their attention, get them focused and wanting more interaction with us, just by the way we ask questions.
Yeah, I like that.
So language is so,
That's great. No, you're right. And so let's see. So, I talked about this in a previous episode as well. A lot of people think selling is only for salespeople, and it's totally not the case. Can you give us some examples of something that everybody's selling, whether they realize it or not, how we're all selling something, whether we realize it or not?
Well, I think we're always, first of all, for people who think they're not good salespeople, I would say, wow, you really sold yourself on that decision, didn't you? Well, I think that you're never selling your product or service or your pitch. You're always selling decisions and good feelings about decisions. Oops, excuse me. My mic, I'm sorry. You're always selling decisions and good feelings about decisions. In fact, you can view yourself as a decision service technician, because nowadays your prospect, it's not enough to get them to trust you. We've all heard that people buy from people they know, like, and trust. That's true, but anymore it's not complete. It is a partial answer, because nowadays our prospects don't trust their own ability to make a good decision. So we now have to sell them on the fact that, yes, their decision they're making is a good one, but we have to do it in a way that's implied, that's not direct. If I said, it's a good decision to sign this contract today, that's too direct and too confrontational. But if I said, before we explore this marketing plan together, I just want to invite you to please share the questions that naturally arise when a great decision is being made. I didn't say what the great decision is, did I?
Mm-hmm.
I was deliberately vague. You see, whatever we can get our prospect to imagine for themselves will be perceived by them as being their own idea, and therefore they won't fight it. They won't resist it. They can't resist it. And a good way to do that is by being vague, so they fill in the blanks. Notice I didn't say a great decision to accept my offer today. I said a great decision is being made. I left it vague, so they fill in the blank unconsciously. So we do that by being vague and also implanting suggestions. Because I am a hypnotist, so I do use suggestions and commands. By the way, hypnosis is not about restricting people's minds and making them do what you want. My way of selling, it's about expanding your prospect's consciousness to include your ideas. It's not about getting your ideas in their mind. It's about expanding their mind to include your ideas. It's a totally different way of looking at selling.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit. I don't know how many chances I'm going to get to interview a master hypnotist. So when did you decide that that was a skill you needed to master, and what did you do to learn it?
I knew a long time ago, I knew 3 decades ago that I needed some kind of advantage, some kind of leg up when I was in a highly competitive field, like the dating industry was at the time. And sales can be highly competitive. And I thought to myself, what do I have knowledge of that other people don't? And through being a hypnotist, I thought, well, I have great knowledge of how the unconscious mind works, how to communicate with the unconscious mind. Now, why is this important? I'll answer your other question, how I got started, in a minute. Why is this important to communicate with the unconscious mind? We know that about 80% of our decision-making process is made on the unconscious level for emotional reasons, for all sorts of things. And then we justify it. We rationalize it with facts, data, figures, numbers. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the way I got into it is as I previously described. I studied NLP and hypnosis with one of the co-founders, Richard Bandler, and then I began to study it on my own. And that's basically, I think those are answers to your questions.
Okay, so were you completely self-taught hypnotist, or did you go to training
No, I was
school for it?
I went through some training, and then I was pretty much self-taught. But
Okay.
you have to understand, I've worked with thousands of people in a 30-year career.
Yeah.
So after 30 years, thousands of people, you begin to see patterns. One of the pieces of hope I want to give to anyone who's listening now to this, who is struggling, is that however unique you may think your struggle is, everyone has gone through it in one variation or another. So when you work with a coach who's seen it before, it's much easier to get out of that trap.
Okay. I think one of the things people are most afraid of is just getting started with a new prospect, just breaking the ice, getting that opening sentence or that opening rapport kind of going. Do you have any rules about that, or rules of how people should best kind of approach a new prospect to make them feel at ease and open to your ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I think that some of the traditional ideas taught about rapport are not workable, or they take a long time. I don't want to spend 20, 30 minutes in a conversation getting rapport.
Yeah.
So I think it's more easy to use suggestion. I'll give you an example. There are about 4 what I call implied relationship words. When you use these words, the unconscious mind thinks, oh, we have a connection together, even though you may or may not. So the typical way of doing this sales presentation would be, before I present our marketing plan together, I just want you to please, the reason I think you should pay close attention is we've sold these many homes in your area for this top price, et cetera, et cetera. So ask any questions you have. Is that okay? Here we go. Something along those lines. Correct?
Sure.
And I would say something like, before we explore this marketing plan together, I just want to invite you to please share the questions that naturally arise when a great decision is being made. So let's take that language apart. We share together. We implies a relationship, correct? It's not I doing it to you. It's not before I present this to you. It's before we. Then I use the word explore. An exploration implies, again, people who are connected. Also, for every exploration, there must be a leader. And for every leader, there must be a
follower.
Exactly. But I'm not saying you are my follower. I'm implying it. You understand the power of implication? So before we explore our marketing plan together, not my or this, our marketing plan together, then there's the word together. That's another word that implies a relationship. I just want to invite you. An invitation implies value, correct? To please share the questions, not ask. What's the difference between sharing and asking? If I share something with you, that again implies a relationship.
Yeah.
Asking implies that you are doing something to me or from me. Please ask the questions. Please share the questions that naturally arise when a great decision is going to be made. So my wild claim, my crazy claim is, yes, if you want to do the other tools for getting rapport, my challenge with them is they take a long time. And also you have to be careful with rapport, because rapport, I'd rather have leadership. I'd rather have in the mind of that client or prospect that you are their trusted leader. That goes, rapport is just an example of responsiveness. Rapport is just a tool to get responsiveness. It is not an end in and of itself. It's just a tool to create responsiveness to the rest of what you're doing. Yeah. So if you can create even a higher level of responsiveness, is their willingness to follow you, their unconscious perception that you are their leader. Is this making sense?
It does. I mean, building rapport isn't that difficult, especially if you have a nice personality. It's very easy to come across as a nice, friendly guy that you can chat with, but that's not the same as them agreeing to whatever you're suggesting. They can still give you all the same objections to whatever your product or service is after they have a conversation, about something else.
Well, I love objections. I teach some interesting, cool ways to destroy objections using some semi-hypnotic techniques.
I'd love to learn about them. So I remember I used to sell adverts in a real estate magazine in London back in my early 20s, and I'd hear every reason under the sun why someone wouldn't buy an advert this month. And it could be, spent our money, or we're doing digital instead, or I'm too busy, call me next month. And I'm sure someone is sitting in my old seat right now hearing the same kinds of things 20 years later. So tell me, what are your tips on countering objections? Are universal?
Well,
across the board. What do you teach?
I need to teach a principle first, because the difference between me is I teach principles before I teach the actual words. So let me give you the principle. The principle is called the pattern interrupt. The idea we've learned from hypnosis is that people respond, act, feel, believe in predictable patterns. When you interrupt those patterns, they temporarily become suggestible. I learned this as a dating coach. So may I take a little tangent and tell a story that vividly illustrates this?
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
So back when I was a dating coach, one of the things I never did was take clients out into the field, so to speak, because I hate to watch them crash and burn. But this guy called me and begged me. And I said, okay, it's $10,000 cash. So he came over and dumped $10,000 cash in my lap. Wow. And I went, okay, I'll take you out. Let's go.
You got me.
You got me. By the way, if you have 10 grand cash, I'll consider being your dating coach. So I know my rates have gone up. It's like 25 now. Anyway, so we went to this restaurant, not a bar, but a restaurant. And they had an outdoor patio where people would lounge around and try to meet each other. I took him out. Now, this guy not only crashed and burned, he just was humiliated left and right. He just had no clue. Colin, have you ever been in a situation, as you're listening and watching me there, wherever you are, I don't know if you can easily imagine this kind of thing. You ever had a situation where someone else who you were connected with was being humiliated, or you felt embarrassed for them?
Yeah, that happens.
I felt embarrassed for him. So finally, after 90 minutes of watching him just get shot down, I took him outside. I said, we're done for the evening. We were waiting for our car, and across the driveway, I saw a lovely young lady. I said, look, there's a beautiful lady waiting for her cab. Now, for some reason, it went in the wrong ear. There's a point to the story, so follow along.
Mm-hmm.
And she got furious. She began screaming at me with invective and things that I can't repeat on the show that would make a sailor blush.
Blush. Okay.
Yeah, and told me to do things with parts of my anatomy, shove them in other parts that don't fit. And my student got really angry. He went to charge at her, and I put my arm out. I said, no, she can say whatever she wants. We decide where we come from. Here comes the pattern interrupt. I looked at her. I said, look at her. She's someone's sister. She's someone's daughter. She's someone's best friend. Somewhere, she's deeply loved. Now, there was a look of, she stopped screaming. There was a look of confusion on her face. And then she burst into tears. She came running over to me, threw her arms around me and sobbed and said, that is the most loving thing anyone has ever said to me. I feel so much love for you right now. I'm so sorry. It had nothing to do with you. Guys were being total butt heads to me and squeezing my butt and saying the worst things. Thank you so much. What's your name? I said, Mr. Wonderful, let's go. Our cab is here. And we left her there. But here's the point. I took her from rage to loving me in the space of less than a minute. And here's why. First of all, I didn't get into rapport with her. Had I stayed in rapport with her, I would have felt what she was feeling. I would have raged back at her and there would have been a fight. So what was she expecting me to do? A typical person in that situation would either yell back at her, would either apologize or slink away. Those were the three patterns she was expecting. I interrupted it and did something different. Excuse me. So by interrupting that pattern, she became suggestible, and I led her to a much different place and a much better decision. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So by interrupting patterns, we create suggestibility. So here's a typical objection people get across all industries. I need more time to think it over. And my pattern interrupt is, I understand. Have you ever taken a long time to think something over and it still turned out to be a bad decision? Maybe it's not about time, but about the clarity you need to recognize a great decision is being made. So thinking about it just like that as we continue to talk together, what do we need to do to clarify for you that you really can move forward today? This gets the real objection out on the table. Once it's out on the table, you can deal with it. But you see, it totally takes the objection and wipes it away. It gives the person amnesia for it. They can't hold on to it because essentially what you're saying is the very thing you want to do that you think will help you will result in hurting you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think that that's a good way of and I think that's one of the key skills is trying to smoke out the real reasons they're not.
But they're not going to give you the real reasons if they stay in their objection.
So what you do is you try and flip it. You try and say,
flip it. Or if they say we already have a supplier, I use what I call my of course method. Of course you do, or you wouldn't be in this business that you're committed to constantly improving every day. So thinking about it just like that, can I ask for your permission for a minute of your time to show you how you can continue to improve by going with us? Do you see that? So we're using the very reason they're giving us why they can't talk to us as the reason why they must talk to us.
I like
Does that
a
make
lot.
sense?
It does. And I know in real estate, price isn't often the reason somebody does business with you. A lot of our listeners are trying to buy real estate off market, and it's about convincing people that you're the right person to buy it, that they can trust you to buy it, and they might not care whether it's 145 or 150 or 155. They might tell you, I want the highest price, but really they're thinking about something else. I mean, what advice do you have on people that are trying to get a deal and a seller is trying to tell them it's all about price, whereas you need to find out the real thing they need to sell?
So we're talking from the position of the buyer, or from the position of the seller?
I'm trying to buy a house. The lady's saying I want X amount of money, and that's not really what she's asking. She's trying, there's something else other than price that would make her comfortable selling to me. How might I find out
First
what
of
that
all,
is?
I would pace it. I would say, well, Miss Janeway, whatever her name is, or well, Sarah, I understand that as a seller, your first, emphasizing the word first, your first priority is to get the highest possible price that people are likely to pay you. So what am I implying there? I'm implying that it's her first priority, but not her only priority. And I'm saying are likely to pay you. So now I'm beginning to put a wedge into her mind that maybe some people won't pay her that.
I like that. Yeah.
But if I can ask you a question, assuming you could get the price that you're asking for, what else would be important for you in getting this deal done very quickly? So maybe they need the cash desperately for something else you don't know. So you begin to get a window into you begin to loosen their position just a little bit. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I like the way you say that, assuming that we can get a price that you agree with. What else is important to you? That kind of puts it to a side, and you can kind of focus the conversation on
yes,
the other
but the first part of it is I understand that you, like me, if I were the seller, want to get the highest possible price that you think people might pay you. So I'd say you want to get the highest possible price you think people might pay you, which implies what? That their thinking could be wrong, and a lot of people might not want to pay them that. Do you hear the power of implication? I'm not saying directly, well, your thinking is off. Most people are not going to pay that high a price. If I said it directly, Colin, what would her likely response be?
Yeah, she'd close the door. She'd feel like you're
Exactly.
accusing her of not knowing the price. Yeah.
But so through pacing and throwing in implication, implying things is powerful. I can't state it strongly enough. Whatever you imply, the listener has to make sense for themselves. And whatever you can get a person to believe to be their own thought, they're not going to resist by definition. Look, if your sales process is working, I'm not suggesting you might find yourself being able to stop and just throw away all of your sales process if it's working for you. All I'm saying is when you add in the power of subconscious suggestion, when you add in the power of suggestion, implication, establishing in the matter of minutes that you are their leader, that they want to follow. When you do that, then every other technique in your tool of sales kit and your sales process works so much better. If you don't do it, you're leaving money on the table. I don't like to leave money on the table. And you're still being of service to other people.
Oh yeah, and I think that's something people should think more about, the power of implication. I mean, it's important in sales, but it's important in everyday life. I've got kids, and I know implying something to my 11-year-old works a lot better than an order. If I was just go there and say, oh, I wonder if there's a lot of kids playing outside, it looks like it's the kind of day people could have fun. That's more likely to get him off his ass and go outside to find out than me just telling him, go outside and play.
Correct, because you're invoking his imagination rather than battling his will. I'll say it again. It's better to evoke the imagination than to battle the will. Because once you get into a battle of wills, you're going to lose. But when you evoke the imagination, you get to skip the battle. That's a great quote. I'm going to use that. I'm going to write that. I just came up with that.
A battle of will is exhausting.
Put that in your liner notes. When you evoke the imagination, you avoid the battle of the wills.
There you go. That could be a title of a new chapter somewhere. And
that's great.
So let's talk about mindsets a little bit. I mean, what can people start working on to have this kind of open mindset where you're phrasing stuff in a certain way, or where you're kind of approaching problems in a certain way? Is there something you can say to help people along that road?
Yeah, driving curiosity and a joyful willingness to claim and accept your ability to learn. See, there's different kinds of confidence. A lot of people are sitting around waiting for the wrong kind of confidence. A lot of people are making the mistake of trying to get performance confidence, where they want to do something really well that only comes to them if they do lots of it. So they're waiting to get results before they do the performing that will bring them the results. They want to put their best foot forward when their foot has never done any movement.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to shoot for performance confidence, I shoot for curiosity and learning confidence. It's the idea that you're either going to win or you're going to learn, and you're going to joyfully claim your skills at learning, and you joyfully embrace your wonderful ability to handle any ups and downs and any setbacks. It's a matter of joy. When you can combine being thorough and dedicated with joy, not seriousness, you can be thorough and accurate without being serious. My original guru, my teacher, Richard Bandler, said, I'll never forget this: you can be thorough without being serious. The other thing I would say is I like my bacon and eggs theory.
Okay.
And my bacon and egg theory goes like this. In a breakfast of bacon and eggs, one animal is invested, the other one is interested. Champions are joyfully invested in their skills and just interested in the sale. So when you become joyfully, notice the adverb, not seriously invested, but joyfully invested in your skills. Adverbs are powerful. As I joyfully, so if someone comes to me and says, I just can't close the big ticket items or the big ticket clients, I say, well, up until now, it was your experience that you didn't have your skills to joyfully close your big money clients. That's a restatement of it. It's true, but it's much more empowering than saying I am a bad closer. I turn around and say, up until now, those are three magic words that will disempower any limiting belief. Up until now, it was your experience that you didn't have the skills to claim your success with your high ticket clients. Does that make sense? I believe that kind of language literally opens the neural pathways so you can take on new behaviors, new beliefs, new ways of thinking about things.
And I guess something kind of linked to that, where you're just, like you say, just love the learning, be joyful in the way you're doing your business, be open to new ideas. It's like if you fall in love with the process, if you just love doing the process, the results are going to follow. Like if you don't focus too much on, I need the result, just know I love this process of going through the leads and approaching the leads and getting in touch with them and learning about it. And I love doing all this stuff and I love tweaking the process. The results are going to follow. The money is going to follow.
Here's the challenge. How do you do that with someone who's just starting out and is really under some serious economic pressure where they really need to make the sale? And so that involves acknowledging that they're being challenged. So I like to say this following affirmation: I'm blessed to have my challenges in my life. I'm blessed to joyously, courageously, creatively face my challenges in my life. I am blessed to joyously, courageously, creatively conquer my challenges in my life. To not say I have to do this, but I am blessed to do this. And then look around at people who are more successful than you and bless them and say, bless the prosperity of Colin. May he flourish and prosper and deepen and grow. And I claim my prosperity for myself and maybe even mentorship and learning from him. So when you bless your challenges, when you keep a gratitude journal, but it's great to be grateful for what you have, but also keep a blessing and for each thing you're grateful for. Also write out a blessing for someone who's further down the path. And then the final thing I would say, I'll give you one more thing. When you don't get what you want, bless the person who's frustrated you. Say, bless you. Thank you for showing up as my teacher and my guide. I wish you the best. I release you with love. I know this sounds new age and airy-fairy. I'm a pretty skeptical and cynical guy, but you have to release that and really take on these mindsets if you want to go.
They work better, right? You're a little calmer, and life is easier if you have that mindset, if you can teach yourself to have that open, relaxed, forgiving Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a
To
better way
do
to
it,
approach it.
but to do it, you also have to forgive yourself.
Hmm.
So this gets into I'll be careful. It gets into a spiritual practice to really touch your spirit through blessing your challenges, through blessing other people's success, and ridding yourself of envy and resentment. Envy and resentment and being demanding of the world. Demanding, entitlement, envy, and resentment are the, I'm so sorry. I've got a little allergy going on here. It's
Hmm.
gross to itch my nose. Are the poisons that will shut the door to grace.
Yeah.
Because I believe in any endeavor, there's the path of efforting. You have to do your efforts, and there's the path of grace where things show up for you. But
Hmm.
things are not going to show up for you, including your own talents and skills, if you've
Hmm.
got envy and resentment and demanding and entitlement. I don't think
Yeah.
anyone else talks about those things, but I have a unique perspective on it
I
because
know, and people aren't attracted to that type of person. I mean, like, you don't want to do, I certainly don't want to do business with someone who I'm getting those vibes from, or I'm getting those traits
right,
from. I want to do
right.
business with someone who's open and friendly and collaborative, and
And
open-minded.
and putting on the fake smile with the surface level techniques is not going to do it if you're
Mm,
bubbling with the poisons.
yeah.
The only thing you're going to get are poisonous people who are going to screw you on the deal.
Yeah. So yeah, and maybe another takeaway is trying to find those people that are ahead of you in the curve with those traits that you
Always,
described, and spend more
always,
time with them than other people
always.
that might be,
How right?
you know,
How can you
given.
get mentorship and learning from people who you envy and resent?
Mm,
You can't. I had to learn this in my own journey through
yeah.
pain.
Sure. Yeah. And yeah, I'm sure a lot of our listeners have done the same. So, aside from that, what other things do you think separate, kind of great salespeople, or great leaders from people that never seem to get above this kind of basic level, or they
Sure,
always find themselves
sure.
below the success they
I
thought they would
think one of
achieve?
the a couple of things. There's a couple of skill sets. One of them is the skill of regulating and modulating your own emotions. In between being,
Mm,
and I learned this from working with guys who were very trapped when it came to dating. See, a lot of people either freeze out their emotions or they flood their emotions. They're either
mm.
frozen or they're flooding. The
Hmm.
ability to regulate and modulate your emotions so you're neither flooding or freezing. The
Hmm.
skill of emotional self-regulation is incredibly powerful. This is an incredibly powerful skill. The next skill to be a great leader is to see where the other person is at without having to go there for yourself. Now, I'll circle back to the story of that woman who was screaming at me. I saw where she was at, but I made the choice not to go there for myself.
Right.
Notice what I said, the ability to see where the other person is at without having to go there.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean you can't make the choice to go there. Obviously, if you're with your romantic partner and you're in an intimate situation, you want to be able to go there and feel what they're feeling. But
Yeah.
even in a relationship, there are times where you don't want it. You want to know what your partner is feeling without having to dive into it,
Hmm.
because then you'll get. So those are some of the skill sets, I think. And then being able to segment your motivation. In other words, to set realistic sub goals instead of you have to do two things. You have to have your dream, your vision, your big vision that draws you, but then
Hmm.
you have to be able to see the shorter steps that get you there. A lot of people can see the short procedural steps, but then they're unmotivated because they can't grasp the big vision. Other people grasp the big vision, but they find they can't stay motivated because they don't see the steps that trip them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So
It
these are
does.
some, I think being able to take apart these skill sets, and rather than saying I'm going to be a motivated person, I am a great leader, that doesn't give your brain anything to point at. When you break it apart into these different skill sets, you can then say, what do I, and this is what I teach in my mindset courses is
Mhm.
exactly these skill sets that I think are pretty much not discussed. Uh, and there are a lot of great trainings out there. I think what makes me
Good.
unique is my background comes from having to teach these skill sets to some of the most upset and even damage people in the world. I dealt with guys who are 30, 40, 50 years old and never had a date in their life. So you can imagine the
Wow.
inner
Yeah.
turmoil and what I had to do to motivate them.
Okay. And so this is a lot of good stuff in here, Paul. I really like it. I mean, do you
Thank
have
you.
any, getting back to this, learning, if somebody wants to learn more about the skill of being able to imply things while they're speaking, or learning, about how to just improve their performance, any books that you can recommend? I know, remind us again of your own book, and then do you have any other books as well that people might want to dig into
Sure.
to switch these
Sure.
mindsets?
Sure. Well, just a couple things. First and foremost, I want to thank you for this opportunity to lead your listeners and viewers on this introduction, just the smallest little
Oh yeah, sure.
slice of obviously in this brief time, I can't give everything I have to give in a private training or a weekend event or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
But a good start is I have an introductory training, which is absolutely free. It consists of a training on mindset, which is basically the first 4 chapters of my book, and then something on destroying objections, and then a little audio training of some techniques I started to learn when I was 9 years old. You get that for free at paulrossbook.com. So just go to paulrossbook.com. If you'd like to just give me a chat and talk to me about potentially having me consult with you or your team, I'm very, very approachable. Just email me, paul@speakerpaulross.com. paul@speakerpaulross.com. Tell me your big takeaways from this, and mention if you'd like me to speak with you further. I read all my emails. I love teaching, and I love to hear from everybody.
That's fantastic. I will put all that information on the show notes, Paul. And finally, I'm curious, when you're not kind of writing or speaking or training or having accidents with your foot, what do you do for fun?
You're funny. Well, I'm getting more outdoorsy. I live in San Diego. It's very beautiful here.
Oh, nice.
So I like to hike, do outdoor things. I'm a cat enthusiast. My girls are being good. Normally I have to lock the out of the room because she wants to the broadcast, jump on the keyboard, twitch her tail in front of the camera. I'm a big cat enthusiast. I'm very, very interested in science. I'm a science junkie, particularly aviation and that sort of thing. So if you have a private helicopter and want to fly me around, I'll give you free lessons. We can do an exchange.
Well, I'll let you know next time I'm in San Diego. I'm here in Tampa, Florida. Some similarities, cheaper real estate where I am, but
and you have no state income tax. I should be out there. We have a punishing income tax.
Is it like 10%, 11%?
Yeah, around there for starters.
Yeah, man. Got to get yourself a vacation home over here. So yeah, well, look, this has been a lot of fun, Paul. Thank you so much again. I will get all that stuff up in the show notes. I hope our people reach out to you. I've enjoyed this. I'm going to listen to this again when it comes out. There's some nuggets in there, and I appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking me out of my foot pain. When I work, I don't feel pain because this is pretty monstrously bad.
Okay, well, I'm glad. All right, take care, Paul. So there you go, folks. That was show 43 with Paul Ross on the power of language to persuade, sell, and transform. I hope you enjoyed that. A little bit different than my normal podcast and the normal guest profiles I have. But I'm like I say, I'm a naturally very curious person. I like talking to experts in lots of different fields, and one of those is neuro-linguistic programming. I love talking about the power of language. This is very, very real. And if you take some of those tips that Paul gave, or if you go to those websites, Paul Ross Book, and download some of those kind of free PDFs he has and use them in your own life, I think you'd be very pleasantly surprised at the difference it can make. Just phrasing things a certain way, approaching problems a certain way, being open to learning, being a naturally curious person. That could make your real estate journey a far more enjoyable and successful one. And indeed, it could do the same in any other aspects of your life. That's why I brought him on the show. I think he's got wisdom that can help me on my journey, and I think there's some golden nuggets in there that other people can use as well. And as always, I really appreciate any feedback you can give me on the show. If you can give me a rating or a review on iTunes or whatever other way you listen to this. I'd really appreciate that. If you've listened to a bunch of episodes and haven't reviewed it, please, take 10 seconds of your time to do that. I'd consider it a big favor to me. And just generally, if you want to have a chat with me about something, go to colininvestments.com. Make sure you get on my mailing list there as well. I do email people regularly. Generally once a week I email about something that's on my mind or thoughts on a guest that I've interviewed. I do some coaching as well. If you'd like to do some coaching with me, just let me know. That could be as simple as a 1-hour phone call to dig into your options and your own real estate journey. I don't charge a lot of money for it. I just basically enjoy doing it. I enjoy helping people while I can. I've had a lot of people that have helped me on my journey and are still helping me on my journey, but I do try to give back a little bit while I can. So yeah, check out the website and you can find out what you need to there, colininvestments.com. All the social media links are on that website too. You'll find me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn and all those places. By all means, connect with me there too. But I won't keep you anymore. Thank you very much for giving me your valuable time today on this show. I really appreciate it. I will look forward to chatting to you again at the next show. But for today, this is Colin Murphy signing out. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.